RNG
just
is
do the
really
same
bad.
amount
Yeah.
as Frost DK, and now I don't have cooldowns, and I'm just gonna get shit on.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it, man.
I
First
mean,
time.
you should know that that you're fucked. That
Yeah, I
shouldn't
got
be an
really. To be
expectation,
fair,
but like there is at least hope for me.
as a disclaimer before we start, I'm not trying to make this video my doom and gloom soapbox or anything. I'm just trying to bring attention to some core issues we have, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. In Modern WoW's history, I count Modern WoW as from Legion onwards. Windwalker Monk has been mostly known as something of an AoE spec, or not a serious raid spec. Mythic Plus has always been its saving grace, as if it were tuned remotely well, it'd be semi-decent in that content. To give an example of this, Windwalker Monk was one of the worst raid specs in Sepultura the first ones, but it still managed to establish a foothold in the top keys done that season. But I've noticed a paradigm shift of sorts since the rework that came in the War Within. To put it bluntly, our AoE sucks. The main culprit of this is the fact that nearly every ability we have is target capped. We also lack any mechanics that scale with the amount of targets we are hitting. We don't gain more resource or damage if more enemies are present, since the removal of Mark of the Crane, which poses a gigantic problem with making our AoE relevant. Instead, our niche seems to be single target and small AoE around 5 target burst cleave. This doesn't translate particularly well into the current state of Mythic Plus, as we don't burst as hard as most specs on larger pulls, and we have downtime in between that damage. It's not like the damage potential isn't there. Spinning Crankick does an uncomfortable amount of damage in single target. It just doesn't translate in AoE. Here's a chart made by Hursty that illustrates what Spinning Crankick would look like if it was uncapped entirely. This isn't the only solution to this problem, but it's one that comes to mind, or would be the easiest to change. Another problem that comes to mind is our cooldowns. They just don't cut it in AoE. In this pull here, Zwen did a measly 1.4% of my damage, with Empowered Tiger Lightning contributing an additional 4.7. This is not to mention that Storm Earth and Fire has a laundry list of problems, but one that I cannot shake is a lack of control over where my damage is going. Simply put, our cooldowns need to be re-evaluated in the future, as they seem almost archaic at this point. While we are in the midst of tuning season before 11.2 releases in early August, Windwalker Monk has somehow successfully managed to dodge any changes for the entire length of the PTR cycle. This will lead you to believe that from the developer's perspective, Windwalker Monk is the perfect spec and has no issues or tuning problems whatsoever. This couldn't be further from the truth. From my experience testing Mythic Plus and Raid, Windwalker is going to be average in Raid and complete garbage in Mythic Plus. We are probably the worst Monk spec this patch, with no redeeming utility or damage profile to make up for our lack of damage. It's a shame too, because the playstyle the tier sets provide is pretty fun, and there are moments where you feel like you're doing a ton of damage. But then you glance down at your damage meter for a moment, and despair takes hold, when you realize you're competing with the tank. I would really love to be wrong here. Maybe Blizzard's gonna swoop in last second and give Windwalker a suite of changes that addresses all of these problems. But I've seen this particular story too many times to know that it's unlikely to happen, and all we can do is hope there are brighter times ahead of us. I've been J-Funk, and I'll see you in the next one.